Okay, so I asked you guys to draw out the process of creating a zygote, process of fertilization. That looks like a red blood cell gone bad. All right. H plus H equals, I don't know what that is. Hap plus hap equals dip. Yep. Haploid plus haploid equals diploid. 1N plus 2N equals, I'm sorry, 1N plus 1N equals 2N. Yeah, all right. That's on the way. Almost there. All right. This would like be pre-zygotic, right? This is a good one. This is a good like teachable moment. Look, and then this would be a pre-zygotic barrier, right? Pre-zygotic isolation, something stopping this from happening. Okay, I like that. An egg plus, yes, some sort of attraction, obviously, from this meosed spermaticized gametic cell. Two gametes coming together. This is pre-zygotic. Without this, it would be a pre-zygotic isolation too, right? Okay. All right. Sperm plus egg, yep, zygote. So a lot of what we're talking about is separating this process. That's why I had you kind of talk about this, or this process not working out, right? So like if things come together and the hybrid isn't fertile, that's a dead end road. If something stops them from coming together, it's pre-zygotic, and that's a dead end road. And so this is a portion of what drives this whole idea or this theory of macroevolution. I'm going to zip ahead to where we're at. So looking at speciation, it's the splitting of one species into two, or the transformation of one species into a new species over time. Now, I just showed you a transformation in the other room, right? Yeah. So that is a new version of E. coli. That version can exist in the environment. If I were to just not kill that at the end of this lab and let that out into the environment, it would grow. I could wipe it on, I'm not gonna, but I could wipe it on like door handles everywhere, and I could have that culture be part of the environment permanently. And then you would have bacteria that grew under UV light all over John Glenn. In the future, I'd never have to pay for the P. glow plasmid. I could just swab the door and be like right there. Okay? But we're not going to do that, right? But you could. Now, bacteria are able to do this a lot easier than we are. Bacteria are single-celled organisms. Their DNA is not protected by a nucleus, right? They swap genes all the time. So they evolve much quicker. But there's two basic modes. It doesn't matter if you're a bacteria or a human population. The first one is what's called allopatric speciation. Now this is where two geographically isolated populations of one species become different species over time. This reminds me of my warbler finches, okay, being on different islands, separated over time, becoming different species. And it can be due to differing selection pressures in differing environments. Now we've talked a little bit about the warblers, right, or the finches, okay? I don't know why I said warblers. I did. So if I look at Darwin's finches on those islands, what was different among those different islands that drove their allopatric speciation? We know they were isolated, but what drove that? See if you guys remember. No one drives, Mr. Mason. It's an island, right? So that's what went in my head. Sorry. Disappointed you guys didn't come up with that one. That you're right. Mackinac Island, you drive a carriage, right? Let's see what we have here. What are we coming up with? Last call in 5, 4, 3. It's more than 10 out there. 2, 1. Lock you out. Okay. Climate and seed variation. I like climate and seed variety. That's a good one. The availability of food in the changing climate. Harder or softer nuts. Yep. Based on the climate. Seed density and food available. The type of food. The type of seed, basically. If they had nuts, seeds, or insects to eat, right? And then whether or not it was a dry or a wet year. All of those led to that beak size and hardness. Okay. So there are other animals. This is an example from your text about salamanders. okay? Being geographically isolated by mountainous barriers or deep valleys and regions that separated them. So if you know anything about a salamander, they like a warm, moist climate. You get too high up and too cold, they're not going to exist there. So if you get a mountain between two populations of salamanders, that is a geographic allopatric speciation barrier, okay? Separates them. That's kind of a similar barrier that creates different races of people too, right? If you think about it, continents separating, okay? We become slightly different over millions of years. You got I'm partly Norwegian, so a lot of me is from like Viking area, like very pale skin. I got a blue-eyed gene in there somewhere, but my brown eyes came from France. But then you've got other people who, let's say, have darker skin, like from Africa. They're going to be in a hotter region, need more protection from the sun, things of that nature. So it's part of who makes us as a human population and as subspecies or races of people as well. Same thing with salamanders. So there's two basic modes. The second one is sympatric speciation. This is where one population develops into two or more reproductively isolated groups. Now, once you completely isolate something as far as reproduction is concerned, they start to create their own allelic frequencies and their own allelic differences in mutations. Because remember, the source of all mutations, all evolution is mutation. So if one population has their own set of mutations and another one has theirs and they're reproductively isolated, they're not going to come back together and mix. Those mutations are going to stay unique to those individual populations, if that makes sense. So there's no prior geographic isolation in this case, and in plants, sympatric speciation often involves what's called polyploidyism. And this is where a chromosome number beyond the diploid number exists. So sometimes plants can come together and bring entirely new sets of chromosomes and create a new organism and not just a 2N organism. And this leads into something called tetraploidyism. Tetra means what? Four. Like Tetris is the game of four-sided figures slamming into one another, right? Tetra. Okay? So that's where Tetris comes from. So tetraploidy, instead of 2N, you would be what? 4N. So now imagine plants being able to bring two diploid cells together and form a new tetraploidy organism. And this results in self-fertilization and species that no longer need another individual to reproduce. Now, we don't do this, okay? Obviously, that'd be kind of creepy. Although there are polyploidy humans. It's usually when they have a complete extra set of chromosomes. Is that harmful or beneficial to people? Let me ask the question. See what you guys think. Thumbs up or down, good or bad? Is polyploidyism good or bad for people? See what you guys thumb up. See what you guys come up with. Final answer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and okay, locked you out. So, what if I told you, if I have one extra chromosome, it could give me something like Down syndrome, like trisomy, right? Or if I'm missing one, I could have monosomy, and I could have an equally as disruptive genetic disorder. But if my entire set is duplicated, I don't have any, let's say, asymmetricism to my chromosomal, that's not a word, I just made it up. Asymmetricism, can I use that? I'm using it, okay? So if I'm not asymmetrical, my chromosomes line up and I have a complete extra set, it's not bad. Actually, if I have a mistake, it can actually help me, okay? Which is kind of weird to think about. So if I had a screwed up gene for making insulin, and this is just a made up example, and I had an extra set of chromosomes that had a good gene that wasn't mutated, it would fix that, okay? And I'd be able to produce insulin, okay? So you guys get that? And so in humans, polyploidyism is not a bad thing either. So tetraploidyism, even what? Better, probably, okay? And in that case, I also wouldn't need to reproduce with another individual. I could just take two of my skin cells and be like, hey, they both got an extra set. We're going to mix them together, and off we go, right? And so in that case, it's almost like gametes within the same organism they're gonna have both. Okay. Oh, we talked about that. So these results in self-fertile species that are reproductively isolated from either parental species. So we can get drastic populations isolating within the same environment without having a geographical allopatric speciation environment. Okay? So this is sympatric. So a polyploidy plant can reproduce with itself, but cannot reproduce with a 2N population. So it can't go back, right? So if I'm 4N, I can't go back to being a 2N organism. And that's because not all the chromosomes would be able to pair during meiosis. And you'd only be like it's like a threesome, right? You've got 3 people, you can only pair 2 of them together. You can't pair the third one. It's like being a third wheel on a date. I don't know if that was a good analogy or not, but that's what I used. Okay. So there's 2 types of polyploidism that are known. The first one is autoploidy. This is where diploid plants produce diploid gametes due to non-disjunction during meiosis. Let's talk about the word non-disjunction. If you've had biotech, you're like, oh, I know what that is. If you haven't, you're probably like, I don't get that. So if there is a junction that's coming together, right? So disjunction would be what? Coming apart. So non-disjunction would be not coming apart. Why didn't they just call it junction? I don't know. It's like a double negative word, right? So if it's non-disjuncting, that means it didn't separate. I think that's another made-up word. I don't think you can say non-disjuncting. I just did. So remember during meiosis, you guys, we're separating sister chromatids, right? If they don't separate, you have what's called non-disjunction. Non-disjunction of the 21st chromosome will cause trisomy in one of those sperm or egg and will give you Down syndrome. So a triploid 3N plant is sterile and cannot produce offspring because the chromosomes cannot pair during meiosis. And then there's this thing called alloploidy, which is a more complicated process than autoploidy, and it requires 2 different but related species of plants. And this is where you get hybridization that's followed by doubling of the chromosome number. So I want you to think about this. If I have 2 2N plants with similar yet still different sets of chromosomes, and I bring both of their sets together, that can work, okay? And the reason it can is because all sets are retained. If all sets weren't retained, and I didn't have symmetry to that, it wouldn't work, okay? But the fact that they take both sets in and they're held in that organism, it does. But 3N does not, right? If that makes sense. And then there's this thing called adaptive radiation. You've talked about this before in regular biology. This occurs when members of a species invade several new geographically separated environments. I think of migration instantly. And the populations become adapted to different environments, and many new species evolve from the single ancestral species. Is this always caused by migration? List some other things. Why don't you tell me some other things that could cause this? See what you guys come up with. Ryan Milks, you should not be working on that right now. We're in the middle of notes. Where's your pear deck? You just got yelled at on YouTube. Yes. What are some other things that cause genetic radiation, or adaptive radiation, sorry, other than migration? I'm mixing my genetic terms up in my head. Okay, isolation, kind of. What would cause something new to come in? That's the question, right? Essentially. Continental drift, natural disaster. Yeah, I like natural disaster. What else? Come on, there's a lot of them. Deforestation, I don't know about that one. Maybe if it drove things out. It's more of a migratory thing at that ice age. Oh, Climate shifts, for sure, right? How about changes in climate and wind? Or ocean temperatures? Or, how about that crazy thing that happened in Michigan last year? That really cold spell we had? Polar vortex, right? Okay. Can be a lot of things. Did we see more snowy owls in Michigan than ever before last year? Did anybody pick up on this or no? No? This was in the news. So when it gets really cold like that, it drives things, forces them to migrate a little bit, right? Or pushes them out of their area. That's not really migration. That's like moving them. Yes, like the Norsemen coming down from the, yes. Or however, humans relocating organisms, yes. Okay, so think about wind just blowing a seed, right? What if, let's say, a glacier melts enough where a seed can now be blown over the glacier to the other side? That'd work, right? And so it's more, just keep in mind, it's more than just a migration thing, which leads to this thing called convergent evolution. And this occurs when a similar biological trait evolves in an unrelated species as a result of exposure to similar environments. So if I grow up in a similar environment as, let's say, a deer, we can both run, right? That's kind of a terrible example, but I'm going with it. Let's go with deer and elk. That's better, okay? So deer and elk grew up in a similar environment, but they don't necessarily have a common ancestor, although they kind of do, but depends on how common you're referring to, right? Well, if you go back far enough, we all do, right? But they're both ruminants, so they do have a common ancestor. But and really, that's the whole thing with evolution, you guys. You have to look at the example given to you, and then determine how far back they're going with the idea. Yes. I can go back. What? Yes. Yeah. 1,500 pounds or so? You bet. Yes. My draft horses were about 1,800 pounds. That's about the size of an elk. I can't imagine an elk that big, though. It's a big elk. That's big for a horse. That's the biggest horse to get. So traits evolving in this manner are termed analogous traits. Similar function, but different origin. Like the birds of the wing and the birds of the bat. They are not from a common ancestor. Let's have fun. Why don't you guys tell me some examples of two organisms that have analogous characteristics? Go ahead. Type them in. Just type in like bird versus bat. Like bird vs. bat. But you can't use that one. Vampire versus werewolf. It's Halloween. They both have teeth, but they evolved from different creatures. They're not. Oh, now you're getting all technical again. It's like ghosts. Ghosts and doorways. You can walk through them both, but very different. Oh dear, that's bad. Ghosts and noses. Both have boogies in them. No, that's a bad joke on YouTube. Don't hold that one against me. Let's see what you guys come on, you guys. There's 13 of you out there. Let's see what you came up with. Goat hoods versus horse hoods? I didn't know goats had hoods. They're like cobras. They live in the hood? G's. Goats, right? G's in the hood? The scariest part about, DNA is all the genomes running around. Frog versus rat. What part of the frog? Help me. Okay, they both hop. I got it. All right. Tiger versus lizard. Whoa. Someone make that connection for me. Tails. Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. All right. What do I have in common with a bat?
Not turtle.
Oh. Okay. That's true. I hang from the. Oh, I don't.
You already admitted that's probably that one title. Yeah.
Oh, what? shouldn't admit things in class. All right. Beetle versus crab. They both have a hard exoskeleton. Yeah. Humans and dolphins, mammals. Yeah. Humans. Okay. Dolphin fins and fish fins. Very good. I like that one. Whale, fish whale. Yeah. Fishy whale. Butterfly. And you want to see my sister get all upset. She's a marine biologist. I always call dolphins fish. She just gets mad. How's your fish doing? They're not fish. You know that. You have a biology degree. You sound stupid when you say that. They're not fish. They're smarter than you. That's the next one. They use more of their brain than you ever will.
Wait.
It is true.
Someone said something just to be funny and it bothers her.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just said something ridiculous.
All right. Door versus ghost. Yeah, use mine. Crab and mushroom. They both have chitin, right? I like that. Someone was right on it with that one. All right. All right. We're going to stop there. That's just a fun way to end. All right.